Morning everyone, Cargo Bike Life here. This is video 6 of the refurbishing a bike to like new conditions videos. Today we're going to be reinstalling the crank and the chain and the rear brakes. So let's get right to it. Here's the little Trek bike we're working on. Rear brakes, no different than front brakes. Little dab of grease. Right on there. Just like we did for the front brakes. Remember the little pin? Goes in the hole, and on the rear here they do have 3 holes, but we're going to put it in the middle. That's where we always start. It's got some good spring action there. You can see that. It's got good action, so we're going to leave it in the middle. Other side. Right to the middle. Again, we got good action going on. Perfect. Get our bolts. Put our bolts in. 5mm Allen. Tighten them up a little bit. Check to make sure we got play. Tighten a little more. We're good. You don't have to torque them down until you snap them. Just get them in there tight. Same thing on the other side. Got good action there. A little tighter just to make sure. Good action. We're done. Rear brakes are reinstalled. Now, when we go to put the crank back on, if you'll remember, we took the bearing cup out of the other side, the non-drive side of the bike. We know this is the drive side because here's the derailleur. This is where the part of your crank with the chain ring will go back on. It will be on this side. So what we have to do first is flip the bike around. We'll do that real quick. There we are. How's that camera angle? I'm going to turn it a little more this way. Raise it up some. Alright. So there we are. Okay. So, because we didn't remove that bearing cup, I have already cleaned it out inside. There's no grease in there. So the first thing I'm going to do, put some grease on my finger, big old gob of it, and I'm going to coat that bearing cup in there. We're going to coat it right up. And we're going to take some of that grease and we're going to put a little on these threads right here, where we're going to screw in our other bearing cup. Put a little grease on there. That helps it. This is an aluminum frame and you're putting a steel part in. Put a little grease to keep it lubed up, because if they ever rust together, you're going to have a really hard time getting them apart. What we're going to do next is pack our bearings just like we did for the front. There's the clean bearing. Some grease here. We're going to go around and pack that bearing up. Make sure it's nice and packed in there. Get some on the outside, some on the outside here. Now remember, the flat spot on the bearing cage is going to be towards us. We're going to put this in so that these bearings can rotate around the cup, and when the crank axle goes through there, it'll be able to rotate on the bearings. So we're going to put that in there. I'm going to make sure that it's nice and greased, which it is. And I'm going to take a little bit more grease, and I'm just going to put it around the back side of that bearing just to make sure that everything's coated real good. That looks good to me. Everything's nice and greased up. Now what we're going to do, here's our bearing cup for the other side. I'm going to put some grease in there. There you go. You see that? Got some grease around the inside of the bearing cup. I didn't fill it, pack it to the rim or anything. Now we're going to get this bearing greased up. Pack some grease in there. Want it to spin nice. Got it all packed up real good. You see that? All packed up with grease. Take this extra grease, put it around the outside. Make sure this side's coated up real nice. Want some nice grease on there. And then what I'm going to do is take it and put it inside my bearing cup. Now remember, the bearings have to ride around the inside of the cup so that it'll spin nice. So the flat side is coming this way, but when you put it back in there, the flat side will be facing inward, just like the other side. Then I'm going to do is take some more grease, and I'm going to go around this one more time. Now that thing is well lubricated. Should be no question of that spinning nicely. Get my hands cleaned up here. Okay. Now this next step, this is real important right here. You have what I call your, this is your bottom bracket axle. This is what, your chain rings and your bearings and everything rides on. So on most of these, one side will be longer than the other. And that's, the long side needs to go towards the drive side of your bicycle. That's where your chain ring, your crank arm with all your chain ring goes on. It needs that extra space to space out the chain ring so that it doesn't rub on the frame. And what I do is I just take a normal ruler and I'll measure. I'll put it right here, and I see that's 1 1.25 inches plus 1/16. Then I'll measure the other side, same way, and that's 1.5 inches. So this side is 1/16 longer than this side. Therefore, this side goes toward the drive side. And then I'll measure again just to make sure I'm correct. You see how I'm measuring? I'm just putting it right up against there. You can put it to the edge of that and hold it with your thumb if you want to. Whatever makes you comfortable, but just measure it the same way on both sides. I'm going to take a measurement like this just to see. That is 1 5/8 inches. If I go to the other side, I have 1.5 inches. So this is definitely my longer side, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to stick that right through there, and then I'm going to give it a little spin, spin it nicely. And then what I'm going to do, got my bearing cup with my bearings in there. I'm going to put it right on there, and I'm going to screw it in. And now you want to screw it in enough where you don't have any play. You hear that play back and forth? You don't want any up and down or side to side. You don't want any slop in it. Spin it a couple times. Got another paper towel right here, because as you put that bearing on there, you'll get grease on this tapered off square part of this crank axle, and you don't want any grease on there. No grease when you put those pedals back on, none. All right, so now take our wrench, we're gonna turn that in. Now we're starting to get tight. Check it for some play. Don't feel just a little bit of play in there. But you don't want to crank this down too much because you still have to put this ring back on there. And this is a tricky part, okay? Because sometimes when you turn this ring, even if you're holding this, sometimes you'll still get a little bit more tension, and then this will be too tight and you'll have to loosen everything up again. Right now, it's spinning nicely. Got just a little tiny bit of play in there. And I don't really want to crank this down. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this ring on there. Maybe I'm going to put this ring on there. There we go. And I'm going to hand tighten it as much as I can, and then I'm going to check this. Little tiny bit of play in there. So now what I'm going to do, let me move this grease out of the way here. Now what I'm going to do is tighten this down. Get my wrench on here. I'm going to try to hold that still. This up there. Make sure I have enough room to turn it. And this wrench can be a little tricky sometimes. Find a spot where you can get it on there. Still hold this. Okay. And then I'm going to tighten that ring. And then I'm going to check it again. Check it for any slop. It's got a little bit of play in it. I'm not really liking that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a little bit of a turn with that wrench. Still got a little bit of play. I'm going to do it again. Still a little bit of play in there. Turn it again. Don't have any play in it now. Can't feel any play in there, but it sounds a little too tight to me. So I'm going to back it off just a little bit. Got a little bit of play in there. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to tighten this. And as I do this, I'm going to watch this nut to make sure it doesn't move. And it did move a little bit. But there's no more play in there now. And there's a lot of videos about how to adjust this. And there's probably guys out there that, you know, are better at it than me. So check out several videos, you know, for installing a tapered crank like that. Don't just take my word for it. Get more than one source of information. Pretty good right there. Now this is the non-drive side, because here's my derailleur. So now make sure this, you know, take a cloth or something, make sure there is no grease on there. You do not want grease, because if this is greased, it will allow this, as it tightens, to get way up on there, and you may never get it back off. So just put it on there. Take your bolt. This is your 8mm. Tighten it up there good. Remember, this is your crank. You don't want it to fall off. Just don't snap it. That should be good. And when you work on your own bike and you reinstall this after you ride it, so you go out and ride it and you ride around a week or two, check it. Make sure it hasn't come loose. Make any adjustments that you have to. So this feels pretty good. Don't have a whole lot. Got a little bit of play in there, just a little bit. So put the wrench back on there. Back on that ring. Give it a couple taps. Try to lock it down a little tighter. It's pretty good right there. Now we got to flip it around. Now, make sure you route this in the opposite direction. This pedal's hanging down, so this one needs to go up. I've seen people put this down and then they'll tighten and then they'll look and both their pedals are on the bottom. They're not even be able to pedal it. Funny though, funny to watch. I know it looks crooked now, but once you get it tightened on there, it should be just fine. Hold on a second. Let me make sure there's no grease. Okay. This on there. There we go. Now our crank's reinstalled, ready to roll. As soon as we get the tires and everything back on it, the cables. But there you have it. That's rear brakes and the crank. I was going to reinstall the chain, but I think we'll wait and do that after we get the rear tire back on. I think that'd be a better time. We'll do it then. Trying to keep these videos short, because I know a short video is sometimes more enjoyable when it comes to stuff like this than a long video. Once you get that done, make sure you check it to see if there's any play. If you feel any play, any movement, and move the crank around, because sometimes you will feel a different amount of play. You're just going to have to reverse it. You might have to loosen that ring, tighten down on it, tighten the ring back up. It takes time. Just be patient. Redo it. If it gets to you, you start getting frustrated, take a break. Just take a break for a minute. You don't have to take this arm back off to tighten it and loosen it either. You got tools, you can get in there. I do it all the time. Just little bits. Take your time. Be patient. Like I said, if it gets to you, walk away from it. Go have a cup of coffee. If you smoke, go have a smoke. If you vape, go have a vape. Come back to it. Don't let it frustrate you. It takes practice. But there you have it. So this is Cargo Bike Life signing out. You all have a good day. Hope you're enjoying the video series, and ride safe. Have a good day.